Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So the Middle East, day by day, is heating up. It's getting hotter than your ex's anger when you finally have to block their number. At this point, a massive flotilla is headed towards the Middle East for a quote coming from President Trump. But we're talking much more than that. We're talking about a massive military buildup that is barreling towards Iran. Massive pieces of military metal are headed towards the region. And get this, just last week, Iranian state TV dropped those chilling threats against President Trump, warning of assassination attempts. But today we've got the death toll being reported by a lot of different legacy media outlets as being over 5,000 people. And now there are fresh US sanctions and strike rumors that are cranking the dial up to level 11. You need to hear this because this is kicking off a whole new chapter in the US-Iran shadow boxing. It's literally a shadow boxing match at this point where one wrong move could change the entire region for good. It could spike oil prices. It could drag proxies into the fire as well. So stick around to the very end of the video because I'll do a breakdown on the threats, on the hardware that's streaming in, this massive flotilla that's on its way, and a quick what-if situation on how all this military hardware could be used. And again, these new fresh sanctions, lots of rhetoric coming from both sides. So this powder keg could literally ignite at any minute. It could be igniting right now. But I feel like at this point with all the rhetoric, it's like Iran wishes they would have swiped left instead of right as things start to heat up to a level that they probably aren't very excited about, but they're never gonna let us know that. They're always gonna have the propaganda coming out that the regime is strong. So the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps would likely be at the heart of some of the targets for this flotilla itself. That's Iran's elite paramilitary force, and it handles everything for the Ayatollah. The missiles, the proxies, it does all the dirty work. They're essentially the mafia doing the bidding of whatever the Ayatollah says. Their ground force commander, General Mahad Pakur, is a hardliner who's been running operations against US interests since the 1980s. He went on record January 22nd of 2026 telling the US and Israel to back off or face a more painful and regrettable fate, saying that the fate from the 12-day war that they enacted, they're basically saying they won the 12-day war. He's saying that things will get even more intense than that. So basically, in my opinion, he's saying this is code for massive amounts of drones and missiles that will be launched at US bases in the area and obviously at Israel as well. But he's also hinting at something even bigger. And this is what I really wanted you to hone in on. And that is he's hinting at closing the Straits of Hormuz, in my opinion. He's basically saying that they're going to enact a massive amount of pain. And when it comes to the region, one of their biggest bargaining chips for Iran is shutting down that Strait of Hormuz. If they can shut that down, they stop a fifth of the world's oil flow overnight. And that is a massive economic problem that nobody in the world wants to deal with. Not Russia, not China, not the US, not even Iran, because they want to keep selling this oil. But this is how wild this regime has gotten at this point. They've got that revolver pointed at the Straits of Hormuz, saying that they're going to shut it down at the flip of a switch. That's their opinion, but a lot of these different assets rolling into the region, this might be the number one reason to keep the Straits of Hormuz from shutting down and keeping the Persian Gulf open so that oil can continuously flow through there. So that is probably the main reason. But then secondarily, if you look at the regime itself, with the new numbers flowing in on the casualties, official numbers are 5,000. There's rumors of 10,000, 15,000. So they could also be moving this flotilla into the region to help deter any other actions going on against the Iranian population. And with that new tally coming in, the Iran regime itself is acknowledging the 3,117 number with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. He owned up to those, saying thousands were killed in a recent speech that he gave, and he called them inhuman savages. Basically, anyone who doesn't want the regime to survive at this point is an inhuman savage. And then he blamed it all on the US and Israel, and he linked the unrest to those two nations and not to Iran itself. Of course not. No. We didn't do anything wrong. The gaslighter in chief of Iran is at work again, but he spun it as sedition going up against the regime. And also the foreign minister is coming out and saying that essentially the US has no sway in stopping any of the executions or the trials, and that they don't let any foreign powers influence their judiciary. So again, the foreign minister of Iran is going to try to seem as legit as possible. That's his goal. Come across legit, but we all know he's basically propped up by the power of that religious extremist Ayatollah Khamenei. Iran even dropped a video mapping every US base in range of their Fatah 110 and Sajil ballistic missiles. Those are missiles that can reach out to over 1,000 nautical miles, and that they can also carry chemical warheads. So again, moving this flotilla into the region could also be the direct response to Iran dropping that map showing the bases that they're likely going to hit. We're talking bases in the UAE, bases in Iraq, bases in Qatar. They're basically trying to get leverage over the US to not do anything to take down the regime. That's the biggest thing today. But fresh leaks are showing exclusive footage of IRGC troops executing wounded protesters point blank, axing people, using guns against them. Straight up crimes against humanity is what's being called out now against the regime itself. So this is Iran's MO. This is what they do. Hybrid war at its finest. So they blend cyber blackouts, proxies, Houthi drone swarms potentially coming into the Red Sea towards this flotilla, and then even likely expanding their narco routes underneath the radar to try to prop up and expand the regime's influence with these new sanctions on their oil, potentially impacting some of their revenue flow. They're drilled on saturation attacks, how to use decoy drones, and how to overload defenses. Their whole goal is to overload Israel's Iron Dome. If you saw my video yesterday, that's likely why those F-15Es with those laser-killing drone rockets are moving into the region to try to lighten the load of what could go down against Israel's Iron Dome. And then electronic warfare is something that Iran is trying to focus on as well, with jammers coming in from Russia on a level that hasn't been seen before to try to jam any attack coming in to take down the Ayatollah. President Trump did say that help was on the way on Truth Social on January 13th. So this flotilla arriving in the region, perhaps that's what was meant by that. Or maybe the administration itself realized that they didn't have enough metal in place to actually take down the Ayatollah's integrated air defense systems and then keep the country from falling into chaos after that happened. And then shifting gears to this flotilla that is rolling into the Middle East right now, the flotilla, all the metal from the airborne side. This is the US rolling out a strike package that would make any adversary sweat, starting with the USS Abraham Lincoln. That is a carrier strike group. It's a floating airfield with air power for escorts, air power for defensive counter-air, offensive counter-air. This has been in the South China Sea doing operations there to deter China, and now it's just days away from being in the Arabian Sea, and it's packing a carrier wing with F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, 600 nautical mile range, 900 mile per hour sprints, Pratt & Whitney F-135 engines, 43,000 pounds of thrust. And you guys just, you know I love talking about those afterburning engines. I just can't help it. But those are the tips of the spear for penetrating Iran's integrated air defense system. So having the flotilla in the region is really what's going to be the catalyst if any action is taken against Iran. They're going to be going up against S-400 radars. The F-35s are likely going to come in high, paving the way for bombers, B-52s, B-1s, and then FA-18s. Don't sleep on those. Those are also on the USS Abraham Lincoln. So EA-18G Growlers doing electronic warfare. So if you think about it, kind of like a layered approach. Think about F-35s going in first, blinding all the different air defenses. So blinding the integrated air defense systems that are literally protecting the palace of the Ayatollah. And then behind that, you send in the EA-18G Growler to blind and spoof any of the radar sites. And then behind that, you have a strike package of F-18s that could go in and drop JDAMs. And then you team those up with the F-15Es that are drone killers, but also JDAMs JDAM carriers that can smash targets along the coast, as well as strike down 40, 50, 60 drones apiece with those new laser-guided rockets that we covered in yesterday's video. And then E-2D Hawkeyes would be up above as well as a part of this strike package, as a part of the flotilla. So it's really interesting because when you think of the flotilla, yeah, it's based on that carrier, but a lot of that force projection comes from the air power that the carrier actually launches, but not just the jets themselves. Think of Tomahawk cruise missiles slamming into defenses along the coastline, IRGC headquarters, the Ayatollah's palace himself going up and striking down the actual gates of that palace, sending a clear message to the Ayatollah that your time is up. So again, it could be a strategic strike trying to get the Ayatollah to leave. It could be a strike that goes in and actually takes him out, or it could be strikes that pave the way for another Delta raid to go in and take out the Ayatollah. At this point, it's keep the enemy guessing. So having the flotilla there is massive because it's force projection that gives the US options when it comes to what to do. And at any point, flipping the script, pivoting, changing to a different form of warfare. And that's what the Navy does best. To me, they're the most advanced projection of air power and sea power in the world. And the fact that they're so adaptable gives the US a lot of different options on how to solve this problem. And the UK also stepped up and said that they are going to pitch in for deterrence as well. And this is a big move. So there could be intel saying that either the US is going to go in or a reprisal strike from Iran is imminent. So they're going to send in Typhoons. This is a big deal. The UK stepping up saying we're going to send in Eurofighter Typhoons to Qatar under a defense pact. Those are twin engine hot rods that top out at 1,500 miles per hour. They're great for quick scrambles. They're there to do more deterrence to the Iranian leadership. So the Iranian leadership knows that this isn't just a unilateral action by the US. The UK is coming in as well. And when you start to see other countries bring in their air power, to me, that is a big red alert of, hey, we think something's about to go down here pretty soon. To me, it's like this carrier strike group is rolling in like the average Joes in dodgeball when they actually find their mojo. They're ready to dodge, weave, dip, and dodge. But here's the deal. When it comes to the air power, when it comes to the sea power, it's all about the boomsticks. It's all about the weapons. Boomsticks is just fun to say, but it's all about the weapons that are being carried with this massive package rolling in on the flotilla. And one of the biggest things is the AGM-158 JASSM that can be loaded on the F-35C. It gives options for standoff. So you can have those F-35Cs 500 nautical miles away from the coast of Iran. They ripple off those JASSMs that can go in and strike multiple types of strategic targets, because here's the deal. They are stealthy missiles. And that is just something that is very hard to contend against, even with advanced Russian surface-to-air missiles, which are protecting the Ayatollah's palace at this point. And then don't sleep on the Virginia-class submarines that could be launching Tomahawk missiles as well. They need to be a certain distance from the surface, not too deep, but at a distance that they can actually launch those Tomahawk missiles out. And those would be a great complement to any strike package. Those things going in and basically preparing the battlefield by striking down a lot of the radar sites. That could be something that we see as well. And they can actually loiter. They can go up above the airspace and loiter and wait for further taskings via Link 16, which is a big net that connects all the different warfare assets in the region. So with this flotilla rolling in, all the different intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platforms that are in the region can talk to the super carrier itself and then pump that information to the fighters, can pump that information to the submarines. So again, the Link 16, think of it as that big net up above so that everybody can talk to anybody at any time of day. It's like the F-35s are texting the F-18s. They're like, hey, you up? So let's talk about a section that I like to call 4D chess, because at this point we're seeing the escalation. It's just going up and up every single day. And one of the biggest things that we're seeing are the sanctioning of the oil tankers. This is high stakes statecraft that is pushing the Iranian regime into a corner, with today, as of January 23rd, so yesterday at the time of this video releasing, Basically, 9 Iranian oil tankers, the shadow fleet of Iran, has been sanctioned for dodging export bans. And this is the latest in an economic gut punch that is choking the hybrid fueled streams of revenue going to the Iranian regime. And they are feeling the pressure with their banks being put on emergency status. And this is a lot of the things that we saw in the prelude to the actual Venezuelan operation, with inner circle members of Maduro's regime transferring hundreds of millions of dollars to banks in Miami and banks in Turkey. So we're seeing a very similar thing take place with likely the inner circle in Iran thinking that something could go down at any point. And the big goal here is IRGC starving. So if you starve the IRGC of their funding and the Ayatollahs are not able to pay their actual shadow force that's supposed to protect them day and night, at some point they're going to get tired of that. And when you get the inner circle to weaken, in my opinion, this is one of the big 4D chess moves that could actually create the fall of the Iranian regime. And then Pahlavi, he is the exiled crown prince that hijacked the networks in Iran and got the information to the Iranian people that there's something better for them than the Ayatollah. So is all this lining up to bring back in Pahlavi to take control of the nation? Well, it remains to be seen, but in my opinion, he would at least be a good figure for some sort of transitional government to set up a democratic process in Iran. So let's talk about a hypothetical situation of what could go down with this massive flotilla arriving in the region. So the big thing is now deterrence is at play. So would this flotilla initially do some quick strikes to take down some of the IRGC headquarters that are responsible for the likely daily execution of these protesters? That would be one option. And the best way to do that would be with Tomahawk missiles launching off some of the destroyers. Those could go in and strike IRGC compounds. But once that happens, likely the fleet, the swarm of drones from Iran will be launched towards Israel. So at that point, you would want the Typhoons and the F-15Es to be airborne. And I wouldn't be surprised if those Typhoons are also being loaded out with anti-drone rockets. So then you could have 8 ships of F-15Es, 4 ships of Typhoons, F-35Cs going up there and slaying these drones. That's going to be the name of the game. And then you have to protect the flotilla itself, because Iran might launch one of those weapons. They might get a little bit too big for their britches and follow through on some of those threats. So you would need the ability to strike down larger anti-ship weapons with SM-2s flying off the destroyers themselves to take down those anti-ship weapons that are going in and potentially trying to strike the naval assets in the region. What do you guys think? So this explosion, this surge of military metal, and now this flotilla rolling into the region, what do you think we see over the next few days and the next few weeks? Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate you guys watching. Follow me on X, follow me on Instagram. I'm posting there pretty much every day. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.